most awkward thing that's happened at a sleepover? Story 1. Camping in the backyard with some friends when I had to pee super bad. I couldn't find the zipper to the tent to get out and I was about to burst. So I ended up trying to pee through the mesh window. I don't know why. Well, peeing through mesh doesn't work very well, especially with terrible 9-year-old aim, and I ended up laying a pretty thick layer of atomized urine all over everyone else in the tent. In the morning, it turns out one of my other friends was awake pretending to be asleep and saw the whole thing and told everyone it was me who peed all over everything in the tent. Dude was awake while he was getting all over him and said nothing. What the man? Needless to say, I was not invited to another sleepover for quite a while. Story 2. Probably about 14. This girl decided to have a big slumber party for her birthday. Well, she was stereotypically uncool, wore t-shirts with wolves on them, bragged about how far she could stick the arm of her glasses up her nose, and kind of always smelled like dogs. I was about one social rung above her. My friend and I were the only people that showed up at her big party. Her mom made us hot dogs, and dinner was silent. Her dad arrived and started screaming about how her two gigantic German shepherd hadn't gotten enough affection today. He ended up throwing a hot dog at the girl's mother. Later on, I made a joke of the word gracias as grassy because I was 13. Her dad pulled me into the kitchen and screamed at me. I was shaken up and scared, so we all went to bed. In the middle of the night, my friend and I woke up with the girl sitting up right between us and shaking us awake. We tried to figure out what was going on, and she just said, we could kiss. Having no interest in such things at that age, I was thoroughly disturbed. My friend called her mom and claimed we were sick and had to be picked up immediately. It was just too much discomfort for one night. Story 3. When I was about 7 or 8, me and a few friends were sleeping in a tent in my best friend Yal's neighbor's front yard. His dad was a bit of an alcoholic, quite similar to Randy Marsh actually. Anyways, his dad comes home from the bar, plastered, bursts into the tent and wakes us all up, saying we should all go up to the elementary school across the street. We go with him, the whole time acting like spies, avoiding all the lights, all under his drunk directions. We get to the playground, and he decides he wants to challenge all of us to a foot race. So we all line up, he yells, "Go!" and we all take off. Surprisingly, he kept up with us almost all the way to the finish line before he fell flat on his face on concrete. He also landed awkwardly on his arm, breaking his wrist. Was awkward at the time, but looking back on it 20 years later, it's quite hilarious. Edit. Woke up today to find I was given Reddit gold. Thank you, kind stranger. Story 4. One time, I was over at a friend's house for his 11th birthday. It was myself, the birthday boy, and 3 other guys. We all slept in our sleeping bags in the basement. At around 5 a.m., we all awake to find Jake yelling at the birthday boy Derek. The reason? Derek thought it was funny to take on Jake's face while he was sleeping, and Jake freaked out. Jake walked out right after that, while the rest of us stayed up and called our parents around 7. I went home around 8, and in that time, Derek was still trying to play it off as funny. Derek lost 4 friends that night. Story 5. Friends. Mom walked downstairs to find 8 6th-grade boys huddled around the TV watching. We instantly pretended to be asleep, and nothing was ever said after that. I still think of it every time I see her. Story 6, 13 or 14 years old. All-night RPG session, pen and paper, with my buddies in my friend's basement. His awesome and very traditionally Chinese mom brings us course after course of food throughout the evening, as I vainly try to GM an adventure where my friends are more interested in creating in-game simulations of being drunk. GURPS had a skill for that, like everything else, than in actually playing the game. The night wears on, and we finally pass out with dawn quickly approaching. Shortly afterward, I wake up with a start. My stomach didn't like the awesome Chinese food as much as the rest of me did. Jump up off the basement floor and bolt for the bathroom, only I'm really tall and have a problem with passing out when I get up too quickly. Blackout in the doorway and fall hard. Wake up a moment later with my friend standing over me. That's when it hits me. That looming feeling of dread when you realize that you had just your pants in front of a room full of your peers. Is this real, or am I dreaming? These terror-filled thoughts are interrupted by a renewed gurgling in my stomach. Apparently, it is all too real. I claw my way into the bathroom and slam the door shut on my startled friends. I pull my pants down and unleash a foul kind of in the toilet, even as continues to soak into my ill-fitting jeans. This happened in the 90s. But wait, there's more. Suddenly I need to vomit because this delicious food apparently cannot leave my body fast enough. I do the only rational thing that can be done and start puking into the garbage can as I continue to add to the mountain of underneath me. Apparently I had offended some vengeful deity that day because, obviously, the basket is wicker. So there I am, pooping everything that can be pooped as I vomit into a garbage can that is, at best, straining it. The floor is covered in vomit, my pants are full of... And that's the day that my social anxiety started. Welcome to the next decade of your life, kid. TLDR. Rolled a critical fail on not shitting everywhere. Edit. Thanks for the double gold, Reddit. I'm glad that my most shameful moment could turn into one of my most prideful. Edit 2. Triple gold now. Holy. I appreciate it, stranger, but let's spread this joy around to some of the other amazing stories in this thread. Story 7. I was in 4th grade and sleeping over at my best friend's house. I wet his bed and then clogged their toilet with a massive dump. I didn't know what to do, so I shut the lid and ran into their garage to hide. Story 8. When I was like 11, my mom made friends with this chick at her work who had a daughter the same age as me. There was a few times where her mom and my mom would hang out and bring us along, so we were kind of friends. Anyways, the girl has a birthday party at sleepover and invites me. We didn't go to school together, so I didn't know any of the other girls she had over. There was 4 other girls. So we eat pizza, swim in her pool, sleepover stuff. So later in the night, after her mom and her mom's boyfriend had gone to bed, we're all hanging out in her room just talking about weird preteen while listening to music. So the TV is on, but since we have music on too, the TV is on mute. I don't know who put it on or how long it had been on, but in the middle of our conversation, this girl says, "Oh my God, look at the TV." It was some soft-core Cinemax, and the room just went silent. So this other girl asks if any of us had ever... Most of us are like, no. So then she asks if we know how. Again, we're all like, no, not really. So this girl grabs a pillow and starts it while we all just sit there. Sean Paul's Temperature was playing in the background. Story 9. I was sleeping over at my cousin's house. We stayed up and snuck out into the living room to watch Cinemax. It was after midnight, and back in those days, that was when all the flicks came on. One came on that my cousin was really into. He started touching his raging erection in his pajama pants, and then he let out a blood-curdling scream. Somehow he ruptured a vein or something in his peen. We had to go wake up his mom. She looked at it and decided we had to go to the emergency room. Our whole family still makes fun of him for that until this day when we get together. Story 10. About 11 years ago, sleepover with girls and boys. All lights are out for about 10 minutes. We have all settled down and gotten silent for sleeping. Then we hear a grown male voice clearly enunciate the word "what." Now, let me be clear. This was not a child's voice. This was like hearing James Earl Jones say, "What?" There was about a 10-second silence, and then one of the girls says, "Who said that?" Silence. Then one of the boys starts laughing uncontrollably. We turn the lights on and he is laughing so hard that he's crying. Here we are all freaking out about some strange man in our room while we sleep, and he's himself laughing. He finally calms down enough to tell us that it wasn't a person who asked, "What?" He farted the word. His sounded exactly like the word "what." We all cracked up. To this day, everyone from that party still answers phone calls from each other with "what." Story 11. The day after the sleepover, my friend wouldn't let me leave no matter what I did. Around 6 p.m., his dad finally said I should probably go home. Friend burst into tears, threw himself to the floor, and was begging his dad to make me stay. Story 12. In about grade 7, I had a sleepover with a few friends. One of them started crying when we started watching The Simpsons because he wasn't allowed to watch it at home. We couldn't calm him down for almost an hour. Story 13. Back when I used to pee the bed in 3rd grade, I fell asleep in my friend's bed during a sleepover at his house. I pissed the bed. It was awkward, and I never stayed the night at his house again. But what was most awkward was that when I woke up, he was sitting in a chair staring at me, waiting for me to wake up. Story 14. It was 1st grade, my first sleepover party. We were watching one of the Star Wars movies and talking Pokemon cards. We were all having a great time. Bedtime rolls around and my dad has to bend over to turn the VCR off. As he crouches down, he lets rip a so thunderous Thor would have cowered, right into the face of my best friend at the time. Edit. Man, I go to sleep and wake up to a ton of little orange envelopes. Because some of you have asked, no, that is not what ended my friendship with the kid. Though his dad and my dad are really good friends now, so I can't help but wonder if they bonded over that. Story 15. I was about 10, sleeping over with a group of pals, including my buddy's little brother who was around 6. We finished up a few rousing games of Donkey Kong 64 and Hydro Thunder and all went to bed. Woke up to find the little brother standing ominously above me, butt naked except for a pair of Christmas-themed tube socks on his hands and arms, and peeing into my half-open sleeping bag. No more sleepovers at Ryan's house. Story 16. I once slept over at a friend's house. He was a bit older than me. This difference was where he had discovered masturbation, whereas I had not. Anyway, I heard his bed furiously rocking back and forth. I asked him what he was doing. He said he was doing push-ups. It was dark, so I took him for his word. So then I asked if I could do push-ups with him. Years later, it all dawned on me. Story 17. Not really a sleepover. I was 23 at the time and drove to California to stay on a buddy's couch. I drank a bunch of beer after the long drive and passed out. Woke up having pissed myself on his couch. It is about 5 a.m. I grab a towel and lay on it on the couch, resigning myself to being the guy who pissed on the couch for the duration of my stay. By some miracle, the towel absorbed most of it. Him and his roommates woke up around 9 a.m., and nobody knew a thing. Edit. Except his cat. His cat knew. Story 18. I think we were all around 15. About 6 male friends came over for your typical high school sleepover. Pizza, soda, and video games until 3 in the morning, and everyone just passes out where they lie. Except something must have been in the air that night because almost everyone was getting sexual. It started with jokes about sword fights in the bathroom. Then a couple of them actually went into the bathroom too and crossed the streams. Or so they say, I didn't verify. Then at one point, 5 of them, 6th was passed out, basically started comparing sizes, and I backed out. I had my reasons. I was closeted and in denial, and the last thing I wanted was to be ostracized in a class that was only 220 students. So yeah, kind of odd that the inadvertently gayest experience of my life happened in my bedroom and I backed out. Story 19. I was out camping with a neighbor friend of mine when we were 14. I woke up hearing the shuffle of her sleeping bag. I asked her what she was doing, and without breaking a stride, she said that she was warming herself up. Then I turned on the lamp and found her on top of her bag, naked and masturbating. She immediately stopped and pulled her sleeping bag up over herself, and she turned out the lamp. We sat there in silence for about 3 minutes. Then I said, "You can finish if you wanna." "No, you ruined it." We didn't speak much the rest of the trip. Story 20. When I was 12, my friend Peter had a disco-themed birthday party. No, I don't know why, at his house. The party being on a Friday, we all stayed the night. Being preteen boys with limitless cola, we ended up staying up all night and decided to watch the sunrise on his back deck. As we're looking at the majestic, slowly lightening sky, our peaceful moment is shattered by a shrill, screaming voice. Looking to the source of the sound, we see his fat, topless, 50-plus-year-old neighbor lady yelling through her kitchen window that we're degenerate perverts. She was under the impression we were all staring at her. Once the yelling started, we couldn't really help it, and that horrible image will be forever burned into my mind. I'm 29 now. Story 21. I have a story of embarrassing sleepwalking while blackout drunk. When I was around 15, I was staying the night at one of my best friend's house. We decided to steal a bottle of whiskey from his parents' kitchen and walk down to the park down the street to drink it. It was around 10 p.m. I immediately started taking big chugs, dead sober and no tolerance. About 30 minutes later, I was blackout drunk, but do remember small tidbits. We climbed the roof of the elementary school nearby, right next to the park, and tried to break into the classrooms. Eventually, I became somewhat belligerent, and my friend got annoyed. It took him about an hour to get me to leave with him. This is where my memory fades completely. We walk back to his house, and, apparently, my friend told me to just lay down on the couch in his living room. At this point, he was really fed up with how drunk I was and just wanted to go to sleep. He said I agreed and laid down on the couch as he went to his room. And this is where things get a little weird. I get up in the middle of my sleep and I walk into his older brother's room and just stared at him in his sleep. My friend had just changed rooms a week ago with his older brother, so I guess in my blackout stupor I assumed it was still his room. He wakes up and asks me what the I'm doing. I say nothing and proceed to lay on the floor. His brother is weirded out but decides to just leave me be and let me sleep on the floor, probably assuming I'm drunk. About an hour later, according to him, he awakens to me rolling around and puking all over his floor. At this point, I am entirely incoherent, so he decides to just deal with it in the morning and leave me be. About an hour or so after that, I get up and walk into his parents' room across the hall and start puking all over their floor. His parents are pissed, needless to say, but somewhat understanding. His mom gets up, cleans up the puke, I am completely blacked out, and takes me to the shower. She takes my clothes off, except for my underwear, and puts me in the shower and turns it on. This is all according to her. God knows what exactly happened and what I was saying. For all I know, was popping out of my boxers. I never felt the need to ask. Anyways, the next morning I woke up in his basement with nothing but underwear on, that is stiff from dried puke. With virtually no memory after we decided to try and break into the school. I talked briefly about what had happened with him and his family as I grabbed my clothes and left. Most embarrassing night of my life. Story 22. This was both awkward and kind of scary. I was 8 or 9 years old. My friend was having a birthday party and a bunch of us were sleeping over in the basement. The basement itself was pretty creepy, and we had spent much of the night telling horror stories until we eventually went to sleep. At around 2 a.m., we were woken up by one of the girls stomping up and down the stairs. She was yelling and crying. I can't remember what she was yelling specifically, but it was basically nonsense. It basically looked and sounded like she was possessed. A few of the girls started asking her to go back to sleep, and she basically just angrily screamed, "No!" and continued going up and down the stairs. Finally, she eventually stopped, without a word, and walked back to bed. Found out in the morning that she had been sleepwalking, and on top of it had wet the bed. She was really embarrassed, and we all felt really awkward at breakfast that morning. Her friend woke us all up acting like she was possessed by some kind of demon. Turned out to be sleepwalking and peed the bed. Story 23. My friend in high school had the house where all of our friends would play Smash Bros. Tournaments until our eyes bled, then go to sleep in his massive RV parked outside. I wasn't, and still am not, a morning person, so I'd usually be the last one out of the RV. One night, I fall asleep on the pull-out bed in my jeans and all, with just a blanket covering me. As I wake up, I'm still in that half-awake, half-asleep haze, and I feel something rustling in my nether regions. I figure it's just morning, and go back to sleep. Then it happens. I feel it again, wake up for real this time, and is outside of my zipper. Pants still on, blanket still covering, and as I look over, my friend is laying next to me, he and I being the only two in the RV, staring directly at the ceiling. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt and prayed he didn't just pull my penis out of my pants while I was asleep, so I packed up and headed home. Lo and behold, an hour later I get a text saying he was so sorry, he didn't know what he was thinking. Yeah, man, you pulled my out of my pants while I was sleeping. I'm gonna need a little space. TLDR. My penis's beauty rest was disturbed. Update. I've lost contact over the years after he went to a different college, but he's now in a happy relationship after he came out a year or two ago. The worst part of this story is until my girlfriend and I met, he was the only one, besides me, to have fondled my twig and berries. My friends were ruthless with those jokes. Story 24. Finally invited to a sleepover at a popular girl's house. Started my period and bled all over my PJs, which I borrowed from her, and her sheets. Story 25. Me and my friend slept in his mom's bedroom on the floor because she liked company since her husband passed away a few weeks before. Apparently, when my mom came to pick me up the next day, my friend's mom said I climbed into bed with her. I had no idea. Classic case of sleepwalking. Story 26. When I was about 11, my new next-door neighbors moved in, and the youngest son around my age invited me to a sleepover. He was a nice enough fella, if I recall, but when we went into his room and he was showing me around, he goes, "One sec, I forgot something." Well, when you have to like a yay, that one sec feels like an eternity. I considered finding the nearest bathroom but was worried I'd get lost or be intruding. I know, no logic there, but I was 12 and they were the first Jewish family I'd ever met, so everything was a bit odd. Anyway, sure enough, I pissed myself real good, and before Ben could make it back to his room, I bolted to the door to walk back home. Of course, I'm not trying to hang out with this guy with all over myself. On my way out, the mom asked me why I'm leaving, and my response which I thought at the time was a pretty good one on the spot, and looking back certainly is not. I said, "You know, sometimes you just need to go home." I walked next door to my house, tossed the urine-covered shorts in the laundry basket, and went upstairs doing whatever the I did when I was 12 for the remainder of the evening. At dinner, my parents confronted me in an odd manner, acting as if they caught me doing something, and my mom asked, "So you were wearing your red shorts this morning? You changed since then. Is there anything you want to tell us?" In the first lie I can ever remember in my life, I promptly responded, "Well, I was playing with my Hot Wheels and was moving all over the house, putting them in my pocket to carry them. And I decided these pair of shorts have bigger pockets, so I put them on to carry more Hot Wheels." They called me out on that right away, but I'm pretty sure I played with hella Hot Wheels that night anyway. TLDR Hot Wheels are the Story 27. Our entire friend group and my poor friend Baxter, that seems like a fun name, watched as my science teacher got a BJ from Baxter's single mom in a hot tub from the window. We were 13. There are some things you can't unsee. Edit, grammar. Story 28. Took the most wholesomely fulfilling in my friend's bathroom and ended up flooding the bathroom at 2 a.m. The parents had to clean up the entire mess. It was an awkward breakfast the next morning. Story 29. Around the age of 11 or 12, we had a Super Smash Bros. Tournament. I guess one of the boys took it literally and whipped out his with pride, thinking it would be some sort of big contest. We all had a WTF moment, then kind of pawned it off as a moment of him discovering his manhood, or whatever. Story 30. I was sleeping over at a friend's house after a party in high school. I shared a big couch next to this girl I sort of had a crush on and a couple other people. I was woken up to a tap on my shoulder and felt my massive pressed firmly against this girl. She did not reciprocate. Story 31. I was about 5 or 6 when I lived in Florida. I was at my best friend's house. Hot, thirsty, and got up to drink some water. Found my friend's parents boning on the couch at 2 a.m. I promptly went back downstairs. Story 32. I came out of the closet during a sleepover. Was sharing a waterbed with 2 other dudes, and 3 more were sleeping on the floor. I just came right out with it, and they all just kind of reacted with, "Huh," and talked about something else. I thought they just accepted it right there and it wasn't a problem. It was a huge relief for me that they brushed it off without any issues, too. Ended up finding out last year, I was 13 when this happened, 20 now, that it was super awkward for everyone else, and that's why they changed the subject so fast. It wasn't at all awkward for me, but for them it was. Sorry, guys. See, although the guy in the middle of me and another friend whispered in my ear that he was bi and we stealth cuddled for a bit, so doesn't matter, had cuddles, I guess. Story 33. I woke up in the middle of the night to my friend stroking my arm. I asked him, "Zach, what are you doing?" He said, "My name is not Zach," and then he went back to sleep. Story 34. Does a Boy Scout trip count? Well, if it does, here it goes. I was in BS in an inner city area. The older kids were dicks. Well, my first weekend trip, my dad loaded me UO on goodies to share. I fell asleep and the older kids raided my bag and took just about everything. So it sucked, but whatever. I go home and tell my dad and he was pissed but really composed, which was odd for my Irish longshoreman dad. So next month is my next trip and my dad made a big batch of brownies but told me not to eat any or share with my friends. He told me leave him in my bag lime I did last time. Sure enough, I woke up and they were gone, and 3 kids were shitting themselves like crazy. Yup, my pops ex-laxed the brownies. He showed up that same morning to the campsite with another goodie bag for me to share. Never HQD my bag raided again, told her older Boy Scouts robbed my treats, so my dad literally made them themselves. Story 35. Mine are all things that I did. When I was in grade 1, I had a sleepover with my old best friend and her new best friend. I was jealous and felt left out the whole time. That night I wet the bed and we never hung out again. When I was younger, I used to puke if I ate eggs, even scrambled. And my friend's dad made eggs. I was trying to be polite and eat them, but I couldn't keep them down and ran to the bathroom right off the dining room to throw up his nice breakfast. Third one, and the most mortifying. I was at a friend's house and got my period. I was wearing a thong and she didn't have any tampons, just huge pads. So I tried to make it work anyway. The next day we were sitting on the computer and there were only seats for 2 of us, so I sat on the one girl's lap. After a while I got up and realized I bled through my jeans and all over her leg. She laughed her off, thankfully, instead of being disgusted. Her mom had me sit on a towel when she drove me home. Story 36. Told my friend I hadn't changed my underwear in over a week. I learned a lot that sleepover, like change your underwear frequently. Edit. Just to clarify, I'm female, and this happened when I was maybe 10. I'm 25 now, and I promise, I'm wearing clean underwear today. Story 37. A friend, whom none of us ever saw naked because he was kind of sheepish about it, pulled off his underwear in his bed. Then, to test his limits, I crawled in bed with him. Then everyone started talking about exotic ways to kiss. We were 2021. Story 38. Ooh, my turn to shine. I've always done weird things in my sleep. I still do, but thankfully not as often. I scream, I get up and take a shower, I go in the kitchen and make a sandwich. But when I was younger, elementary age, I used to strip while I was sleeping. I would wake up and my Scooby-Doo nightgown would be underneath my pillow. It was weird. So one night, me and some 10 other girls were spending the night at my friend's house because it was her birthday. We were having fun, eating cake, watching movies, blah blah blah. We all fell asleep while watching some movie. In the morning when we all wake up, I'm still half asleep and I get out of my sleeping bag and stand up and stretch in front of everyone. But naked. Some 10-15 years later and my friends have still not let that one go. Story 39. My mom had this close friend who had a kid almost exactly my age, 3 weeks younger. When things weren't good with my dad, Mom would take my brother and I to their place for a sleepover. We kids all slept in the same room, and once my brother was asleep, he'd molest me. I somewhat enjoyed it, and that made me feel awkward and embarrassed. It still does. Both of us had been interfered with separately by adults, so I suppose I equated it with affection. This happened when I was 8. Despite enjoying what he did, I still hated going there. Part of me knew that it wasn't right. Plus, she made stew every fucking night. I hated it. It took me years not to associate stew with awful things. Welp, that wasn't very lighthearted. Sorry, guys. Story 40. When I was 6, I watched Jurassic Park at a friend's house one night. Got so scared I demanded my mom to come pick me up and take me home. So I said I was sick. My mother did not believe me. So I my pants in my friend's living room on accident, so she would have to come get me. I didn't really go over to my friend's house that much after that. Fear can make a child crazy, especially fear of velociraptors. Story 41. Back when I was big into getting high. My friend wants to hang out, which meant smoking pot, so I agree. It's important to note that for whatever reason, this friend always got it from smoking. Weird. So we're at his house, high as E, and we decide to watch a movie. It's also important to note that we are on 2 separate couches. About 20 minutes into the movie, I noticed the guy rubbing his crotch over his pants. Seriously, weird. He gets up and goes to the bathroom, so I assume he's just going to it out in private and that'll be that. To my surprise, he decides the more appropriate action to take is to get stark naked and run like a madman towards his couch, and then proceed to takisya the couch. I saw this all out of the corner of my eye and I tried to just watch the movie, but thee was too. I burst out in awkward laughter, like a mix of, "What the, man?" style of disbelief and a little bit of sadness and terror. I don't let him live this down. Story 42. No one showed up. I had a lonely childhood. Edit. Thanks to everyone saying you'd show up. You're all aces in my book. Edit 2. Thanks for the gold. That shitty childhood was worth it. D. Story 43. I was 13 at the time. The sleepover was uneventful. TV, PS2, tons of food. Then I fell asleep only to wake up in the middle of the night to see 2 of my male friends hooking up. Once I realized what was going on, I ignored it and went back to sleep. I had no idea that they were gay, although now they both have girlfriends, so who knows? I give them props for having the to go at it right in front of us while the rest of us slept. To this day, they have no idea that I saw it. Story 44. Too late to entertain anyone with this post, which will surely be buried, but here goes. I was on a camping trip in the far north, Arctic, and there was a night where about 6 people managed to get a decent night of sleep in a room of a local's home. We all shared the room and everyone fell sound asleep because they were exhausted from days of hiking. Except me, that is, because I don't sleep often and was wound up with the storm outside. In the middle of the night, as I'm laying there looking out the window, I hear a really, really weird sound, like this rubbing of silk. It gets more and more intense, and for a moment I'm having this horror story moment where they're just Has to be some weirdness coming to get us all. The sound turns into a slight thumping and gets more and more intense. I look around and to my shock, see what is going on. One of the shyest girls I have ever met, I mean, I'm talking an extreme level of shyness, is face down, up, finger fucking the ever-loving out of herself. As far as I could tell, she was out cold and having some wonky dream. It was really awkward. I didn't want to watch, so I didn't. But it was a small room, close quarters, and there was no escaping the sound of schluck thump, schluck thump, schluck thump, schluck, 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 schluck. She finally awoke with a start, and out of the corner of my eye I saw her look around the room, probably realizing what happened and praying to holy baby Jesus that nobody saw. It was weird. Really weird to see someone like that in an unconscious state. I could never look at her as the diminutive shy girl again. P. Story 45. I'm a female. When I was in grade 4, about 9 years old, I was having a sleepover at a girl's house who was the same age. The dog, a Jack Russell, wandered in and she said, "Want to see something cool? Watch this," and pulled down her skirt and underwear and spread her legs, letting the dog lick her out. I was stunned. I can't remember what my exact response was in the moment, but my mom picked me up about half an hour later. Story 46. A lot of these stories are from when people were 10, 15. I had a friend about 2, 3 years ago, when we were both about 23, 24, who was a night owl, and I worked the third shift so we'd hang out pretty regularly late at night. Drink, smoke, shoot the while I'd play Xbox. She had some troubles but was generally a sweet girl. One night she shows up, fucked up out of her mind, and I put her to sleep in my bed and just played some video games until about 5, 6 a.m. She shoots up in bed, looking like a zombie, and says she has to pee but couldn't do it on her own. So, I walk her into the bathroom, set her up on the toilet, and walk out back into my room. I hear the toilet flush and the door close, so I assumed she was okay. Then about a minute goes by and she doesn't come back into my room, when all of a sudden my mom walks in and says, half asleep, I think one of your friends just tried to spoon me." Story 47. So, back in junior high, I had this friend, let's call him Steve. I was over at his house like I was every weekend, and we had another one of our buddies come over. This kid was unique in one particularly strange manner, and I swear to you, I'm not making this up. The kid could literally inhale air into his anus and produce the most thunderous and extensive farts I have ever heard in my life, to this day. Well, one day we asked him to do it, and to sit down next to Steve's dad on the couch and let one rip. However, the imbecile took this as, "Hey, go on Steve's dad's head," and he proceeded to do so. I have never witnessed somebody turn from happy to utterly furious so fast in my life. I was absolutely speechless, and Steve and I had to stand there and watch our friend get laid into by Steve's dad. Top 3 most awkward experiences of my life.